everybody. We're here once again this month to talk about Blinded by Sight, or Nugget out of Blinded by Sight, The Heart Matters, a book that I wrote, Lisa Keeton. And I have with me Ambrea Peters, who is a marriage coach. And I also have Tamara Crooms, who is a young adult in the nursing field. And we're here just one more time this month to just talk about a little nugget that we got out of one of the stories. Actually, it's a story out of this book, and it's called, let me get to the story real quick. Well, the topic is going to be godly but boring. But the name of the story in the book is God's Chosen versus Life Choices. And so sometimes in life, God will choose us, and then we'll go back and choose our old life. So we're going to talk about Godly But Boring. It's based on God's Chosen versus Life Choices from the book Blinded by Sight, The Heart Matters. God has chosen to put together his prophet and a prostitute. And it's a representation of God and his people. The prostitute Gomer has decided to return to her old life. Now, Gomer came from the life of the streets. Sometimes people have to do what they have to do in order to survive, or they're in a bad environment, but that doesn't make her a bad person. She's just doing what she needs to do in order to be able to be, or to even survive sometimes. But she's no different than any of us, because sometimes we do stuff that we need to do in order to make it or in order to survive. So we are all here, and we've all probably sampled or dabbled in things that haven't been the greatest for us. So Gomer and Hosea, or Jose, is that right? Jose has
I always thought it was Hosea.
Hosea. Okay,
Yeah.
so for Gomer, Hosea probably was something nice, refreshing, and different because she was dealing with a whole bunch of different men. So it's probably a welcome change to her initially, because it wasn't something that she was used to. And he probably gave her stability. He was faithful and he was probably reliable. But what do you do when stable, faithful, and reliable gets boring? So that's what we're here to discuss today. So one of the questions that I thought about or I came up with was, Hosea Gomer was a very experienced person in the arena of sexual relationships because of the fact that she was a prostitute. And then, of course, she married a prophet who we're going to say represented God, and God is holy. So we're going to assume that this guy was pretty much just probably a virgin and or lacked a whole lot of experience. So a lot of times in life, you can meet a man that's worldly, and he can teach a woman what to do because of what he likes. But in this instance, it's the woman who probably has to teach the man what she likes. And so, how do we deal with that, or how do we make it so that it doesn't become boring or monotonous in life? So that's where we're going at today with this subject. So we're going to go to the marriage expert and kind of like put her out there.
Come on, stir the pot for us, Ambrea.
So I think that I think that when okay, so biblically when we think about Hosea and everything that he did to get to win her or to make sure that she was happy, he went and got her out of some bad situations, what I imagine to be some pretty bad situations. And I like to think that a man who was willing to go the distance the way that he did would also be willing to go the distance to pleasure her. And so I think that had they had a conversation, he would be willing to do what she needs or what she likes. Um, my mind can be a little. My husband hates when I say perverse. But when I think about when I think about what that may have been like, I imagine that he would have been the kind of man that would have been willing to please her if she communicated it to him the right way. What do y'all think?
I
I
think
think,
that's
go
great.
ahead. Go ahead, Tamira.
I like how you said, like from a biblical standpoint, because I know when it comes to men, let's say there's a difference between like biblical masculinity and your personhood, and I tend to think that those like nice men, I think sometimes what they are actually trying to say is that they lack courage, ambition, being spontaneous, in just
Mhm.
different ways and different aspects in their lives, versus a woman who's already experienced. Homer, she was very experienced, so when she got to something that was more slowed down and everything, it was kind of like her treating like teaching a baby, and like having to raise a baby, for to get to her level and everything. So
Yeah.
I really think that, I mean, it's very common, and I think that a lot of men sometimes are boring. But it's not a bad thing, because, and I really do think that men should appreciate who they are, as like, to not be insecure in their manhood. It's very important. But I do think that some men can learn just to let loose sometimes. Some men are very secure in who they are. But if they actually were very secure in their identity in Christ, then they would be more free to open up to a woman, right?
True.
I don't know.
Yes.
If
So
you
I've
feel
been
and women, we look for that security, and you know.
right. I was actually thinking about that, how your primary need as a woman is security, and
Mhm.
not just in the financial sense, but also in the sense of in the stability sense,
Right.
if that makes sense. And so while it may be boring because of the type of man that he is, the security of him can make it more comfortable.
Mhm.
Um, I had something so juicy, y'all, and it slipped my mind when you made your last statement. Um, mm, bring it back.
So while you're thinking about that, let me just say this about some things that I've been through. So to be honest, I never really dated a godly man before I met
Mm,
my husband. I stayed away from church boys or church men or church whatever. I just stayed away from that arena because in your mind, people say, "Oh, they so straight laced, or they so this, they so that." I didn't realize that those same guys that's in the church were from the streets, and so they could be just as whatever as everybody else. And so I pretty much stayed away from that area. And I just was, just out there dating people who weren't in the church arena. I put it that way. And so that was an interesting concept to me when I came in to see that these guys are pretty much the same boring guys as the guys, out in the world. So, so that was always something interesting to me. But to be honest, if you look at life, a lot of things are monotonous. Like once you get married, you have kids, you like cooking, it's monotonous. Having babies, you're raising kids, you're going to work, and life is just, it just goes on. And so you got to find a way to make it exciting, or find a way to add spark, or find a way to, bring out the good things in life. So it's not monotonous, not boring, and do things, but you can't let it get into that rut, which is not a good thing.
definitely.
Get into that rut, then you will want to go outside and find something that's more entertaining and bring that into your life instead of staying where you're at. So you just have to learn how to make fun or have fun within the confines that you're in.
Right. Which isn't hard to do. It's just a matter of being healthy in your communication. Um, if it does seem like it's getting a little dry, talk about that. What can I? Is it okay if I take this back down the sexual road?
Yes.
If it's getting a little dry, have those conversations about the fact that it's getting dry. And as long as it's done in the right spirit, you can say what you want to say. And I don't know, I can't imagine there are very many men out there who wouldn't be okay with mixing it up and doing what is pleasing to you if it's talked about in the right spirit.
Mhm.
Um, what were you
I
gonna
think
say?
that would be like if they have your best interest at heart. But if it's all about them, they're just there to, and I don't know how to say this in the right way, but to just get their rocks off or whatever.
Mm,
Um, so it does have to be something that they have to care about the other person to make sure that all the needs are met and stuff like that, so that you're
mm,
not boring in that area. Um,
yeah.
but that was my input for, for that. But
So, because I've met someone who was godly. They weren't boring, but they were how can I put it? They were religious, I'll say. So, and that made them boring to me because it was like they used the word of God to like their advantage instead of just like being themselves and being authentic.
Mhm.
So it kind of made the whatever it was going to be or whatever it they wanted it the road they wanted to go down. It made it less interesting. And I think people when in this dating pool now, I think it should be focused more. I think it just brings together like whatever you have to bring to the table. I feel like that'll be more important than just this is all what I can do, which is very important. But it's just like just bring yourself, like just be authentic, just be yourself, and then we can work it. Like let's just see what we can work it, together instead of just trying to push out so much of who you intend to be. I think that's just what a relationship is. Like, don't we cultivate? Don't we do it together? Like to see that growth and everything. I don't know. This dating pool out here is something crazy.
But you guys have a whole different. Your generation has a whole different way of dating.
It is.
Because even talking to my daughters, like you guys meet everybody online, and I'm just like, how does that really work? I mean, to me, I would be scared. You don't know anybody who knows that person. It's just
Hmm.
a pool of people online, and then you're letting them come into your life, and that to me is just really just kind of scary. But they said it's the norm nowadays.
It is. I mean, that's what gets people eye. Social media is the new thing nowadays, so it's where people communicate the most.
Yeah, that would be hard. So in dating and meeting guys like that, um, what do you guys do to have fun? What I mean, I don't know. Because I'm old school. So go out to dinner. You get a meal, go to movies. You go out and do things. But on this online chat, which I don't even understand, how do you get to know? Because people can just type whatever they want to type.
Which is
They can
true.
say whatever they want to say. You don't really know if you're getting a real person or you're not getting a real. You don't know what you're getting.
Hmm.
So how does that even? I don't even know how that even looks.
It's like I was like, do I want to even take it there? Do I want to go down that road? Because it's been multiple times where I've been presented with someone, offline and everything, and then when they're in person, it's just like the total opposite of what they say they were, and it takes. Thank God the Holy Spirit is with me, but it just takes like this is just not going to work, or I think we're just better being friends, and I just think you have to know what it is that you want, you know. Nowadays, as a woman, it's a lot out here. It's a lot of options. It's just a lot, and social media, honestly, is very well put together, but when you get the actual whatever it is, it's false. And I'm like you, dinner, let's go out, let's see each other in person, like, let's do it like how old school, would do it, whatever, so I can get to actually know you. So I haven't been, believe it or not, I know I'm very whatever, but I haven't been approached as much, I think, and I also think it's because in some ways God can hide you, he's trying to protect you. So
Right.
I've had my fair share, but the online dating, I never did the online dating. Social media, some people have tried to reach out, but I've never actually dated on an app. It was just never my style. It was never my thing. I don't know how to do it.
We counseled a few couples that are actually doing pretty well, who met online, but they were, like, I get now. My understanding now is that most people who are dating online, a lot of times are dating people out of town. I know a
Hmm.
lot of people who are dating people out of town online, but I also know people who met within the city. And Jacksonville is big, but it's small, and everybody kind of runs in the same circles depending on the age group. And so you'll end up meeting somebody that you know, or somebody you know knows them well. And so something that Tiffany said in the chat was, but if you communicate with them long enough, they'll slip up and show you who they are. That's definitely true. If you're communicating well enough,
Yes.
um, if you're really having conversations, and I'm talking about thorough conversations,
Hmm.
people will definitely show you who they are.
They will. Mhm.
Yeah, you don't even have to do a whole lot. You
Yeah, I
just
was
got to
just
ask
gonna
a few
say,
questions, and just keep talking. Watching consistency and patterns, you'll start to see who you're dealing with. Definitely.
yeah.
And that's the fact that you have to take the time to get to know them. But if you're in a rush or you're in a hurry or you're needy, a lot of times you don't take that time and you don't communicate and you don't find out who they are before you dive in, and then you got this mess
Yeah.
that you
Right.
find. Yeah, and then it's a whole nother can of worms, especially if you start sleeping with somebody or you start laying around with somebody, and then
Mhm.
you get you're open to all kinds of things. And so yeah, so that could be very interesting. But Gomer she did go back, and he went back and he found her just like you said, and he paid to get her out. And so did he do that because he? I guess my question is, did he do that really because he wanted to, or did he do that because God told him this is what he needed to do? And so I know he was a man of God, and he was going to do what God's desire and God's will. But deep down inside, sometimes we do what God asks us to do, but it's really and truly not what we really want to do. So,
I, I think when you invest the way that he was doing, it becomes your want.
Mhm.
Something that I learned a long time ago from Pastor Jones was that if you a man or no one is going to take care of anything that they haven't paid for, and not just monetarily, but in with your time and everything that he did to try to go back and get her all those times, he's invested. And I think that at some point, while you're being obedient to God, your feelings eventually line up and it all works together. And so I think it was what he wanted to do at some point. It became what he wanted to do. I think it started out in obedience and it became me wanting this. And I think it actually got to that point when they joined together for
right.
real, sexually.
Mhm.
Well, but she
I
had a
think that
child,
desire shifted.
right? She had a
Hmm.
child, and then she left. So they had
Yeah.
been together, and then after that, she left. So I mean, what in that will cause a woman to say, "Okay, you know what? I'm with this man. I'm honored that he wants me. I'm happy that he chose me because he's a godly man. He's something different than all the other men that I've been with, that I met, that I had a relationship with, and then I go and I have his child, and so we're a unit now. But then something in that relationship had to be missing for her to go back out. And I know it's a representation of Israel, and the children of Israel, with the messing around on God and not being faithful to God. But it also could be, how it is with us nowadays. We get married, we have a unit, we have a family, and then something is missing in that relationship where you want to go back out and try to find what you should have came away from. So
I,
it's Go ahead.
I think with her and her situation, I think it was a love for a dysfunctional environment. I've seen a lot of women, go back to abusive relationships, or you've heard it, it's very common, men as well. And I think it's because of a lack of knowledge, their identity and who they actually are, being secure in their identity in Christ. And I also believe that they believe that they're more comfortable there because they think that they can flourish there
Right.
because they've had some things that worked out before, so they believe that it'll work out again. But it's not that they're flourishing there spiritually, it's just fleshly that they are. So they're getting all of the things that they want, of course, on the outside, but they're so empty on the inside. And I think that's why, coming back and forth, going back and forth, it's just like a rat race. But it's like but I'm comfortable here, but I know I need to move here,
Right.
type of thing. And we do that, our relationship with God. I'm comfortable here, God, but I know I need to go here. I know you're calling me over here. Like what Bishop was saying, he's calling us, right? God is calling us. He calls our names, and he'll never stop calling, but we're so comfortable over here living in this dysfunction or just something that excites us spontaneously from our flesh, yet spiritually we're so empty and we're hungry and thirsty for more. And God, He can give us that life, that abundant life, of more if we just trust Him, in the process. I think a lot of us we think that having life with God can be boring, I'm sure she did it with, with Hosea. Life with a nice man or someone who actually loves me will be born, because I'm actually getting all of what I need. But if I have to go out here and seek it, that's giving me like that spontaneous drive of, excitement out here in the world, or, but I'll never be fulfilled.
Right.
So I
So I
think
want
that
to
that's
go
what
ahead. I'm sorry. I want to
created.
thank our bishop for coming on. He's on here, making a few comments. And so we thank you for coming on and listening to us. We are growing and we're learning from the word that you share with us. Um, but the one thing that I was thinking about is just um, dating as a whole. And I think me and Amber had this talk a while ago about just, and I don't know how many married people are on here or not married on here, but I had made a comment earlier about, when you're in a relationship with somebody or you're having a sexual relationship with somebody and them just making you feel safe and making you feel comfortable and doing all the things that you need or that you want so that both parties are gratified. And when one party has a whole lot more experience than the other party, sometimes somebody's going to get left out or left behind in a relationship. And so communication is the key um, to letting that person know. And hopefully, they're open to hearing or they're opening to trying to make sure everybody is happy in that relationship or happy at that time. So communication is key to a lot of problems, but a lot of people have problems with communicating. And so you can say something and you know, it's not heard or it's heard, but it's not acted upon. And so in that instance, how do you, as a marriage coach, how do you get past that?
How do you get past? Okay, so how do you get paid? So you're saying that you've communicated it
Right.
and there's still no change
Right.
in the
Or
marriage.
right.
What were you going to say?
In a marriage. Yes.
So I feel like so after you've had that conversation and nothing has changed, it becomes something that you have to pray about. Is it, am I, and then going back to him and saying, hey, we've talked about this and nothing has really changed. Is there something that I may be doing, or do we need to have it could be deeper.
Right.
And so it could take time, and that's why I said pray about it, because I've found so many times that when I pray about something, I'll end up being given the opportunity to have the conversation that we need to have when he's ready to receive it. Um, I don't. My husband isn't the kind of person where I can just walk up and just be like, "Hey, I want to do this and this different. Let's," and expect immediate change.
Right.
He's a thinker, and so he needs about 2 or 3 days to kind of meditate on it, and then he'll come back. And it's all about how it's presented with him too. Don't He wants me to run straight up the middle, but it can't be in a way that seems like I'm trying to argue, or it's got to be done in the right spirit.
Right.
And so, whenever I have something that I need to bring to the table and it's like, oh, this may not be received well, I just make sure it's the right time. I have to use wisdom in how it's brought up.
Mhm.
And I haven't found, like, being a marriage coach, I very rarely find where a woman has said to her husband, this just isn't working, or this just isn't really good for me. Can we do this? And he's not open or,
Okay.
or willing to make those adjustments. You may have a few where you may have a few that where it's difficult to receive, and that's why it depends on how it's packaged. He can't feel belittled or feel like it's not good enough. It's good, but can we maybe try this? Or if we did this, this would make me feel this way. I'd be more open if we could do this. Can we try this? It's all about how it's packaged. But a man does have a desire to please his woman sexually. I haven't met one that isn't willing to or doesn't want to.
Right. So Tamir, we know you single, and we're not trying to leave you.
Yes.
We're not trying to leave you out of this conversation. We do have a question, but was the person always like this? Sometimes we fall in love with the what could be instead of what is.
That's so true. So someone told me a while back, And at first I was a bit like, well, I thought that's what we were going for. Someone told me to not don't date or like fall in love with just potential, but for actually what it is. That's because if you see like it for what it is, this is what you're gonna always have. Is that always the case? Or, for because I know for some people, even though you date for potential, you eventually get into relationships, you guys grow, and you see what you saw in this person, like maybe y'all always had a vision together and y'all finally got that vision and you're just growing and everything. But is that true? Like to not date for potential?
I think when you're young, that's all you really have.
Right. What am I supposed to
I mean,
can I rely on,
now
outside of that?
if you date somebody 40, 50 years old and you dating them for potential, then you will have some serious issues. But when you're young, I think that's all that there is because you haven't gone anywhere, you haven't done anything in life really to accomplish a whole lot, and so you do look at that person and you do look at potential. I don't know at what age or what stage in life you stop looking for that, but yeah, I think that's normal when you're in your younger years in life. Like I wouldn't like right now at 60. If I was looking, I wouldn't be looking for anybody with no potential.
Right.
You need to be there. So yeah, that is just once you get a little older, I think your lenses change on what you look for, what you expect.
Okay. That's true. I guess she was just pointing to my older years because I'm like, I mean, what else? What else is there for me to, I guess look through the layers of like what else is there, so how the message is communicated or packaged
Package.
matters.
She's just agreeing with something that Ambrea had mentioned earlier.
And Bria, you mentioned how your husband is a thinker and it takes him a couple of days. Is that normal for men? Lisa, is your husband the same way? Or some men like is your husband like, okay, like as soon as you tell me something, I'm gonna like get it done or try to, or does it take him a couple of days to
So usually by the time I tell my husband something, I have thought about it for weeks at a time. And so of course I need to allow him that same time to think about his answer.
hmm
So in that sense, yeah, because I've already in my head, I've gone through it, I've gone over it, I've already come
right.
up with my own answer, my own solution and stuff like that. So I need to say what I'm gonna say to him and then give him time to respond to that. So I think that's in most cases because my mind's always running, and so I'm always thinking, always processing. And then by the time I share it with him, I already have an answer of what I want to do and how I want to do it. But that's not his answer. So yes, I do have to give him
Right.
time.
Because I know
I,
women are mainly logical and men are emotional. Sorry, go ahead.
I think it depends on the personality type too. Um, because I know when I think about my sister and her husband, she's the one that needs to process for a minute, and he's the one that's ready to, like, he's right on it, you know what I mean, and wants to talk right now, and she's like, just give me a minute, you know. So I think it all depends on the person. My husband's always been that way. He never wants to respond quickly because it may not come out right at the time, you know, depending on what's going on. So he always wants to take a minute and process it. It's always really good when he comes back, though. Like, I know it's going to be loaded. I've learned to appreciate it, but it used to drive me crazy. I used to be like, why can't we talk about it now? And he's like, you don't want me to talk about it now. The grace is lifted for this discussion. It's done. It used to drive me crazy, but now I'm like, he's gonna come back and it's gonna be really, really good. Like, he's gonna have a whole, a whole. Depending on what it is, I just know he's gonna have a whole plan ready, and this is gonna be good. I'm impulsive. Like, I'll just do stuff. Let's talk about it right now. It's not
Right.
time. You know, you'd be surprised that when where Pastor Jones would be teaching, how many times I would be trying to have a conversation in the midst. He's like, we're having church. Like, I'm like, but what about that thing earlier that you said? And he's like, stop talking right now.
Right.
And so I need somebody to give me that balance and say, back up, son, be quiet.
So Sister Hodges wrote, yes, experience and time helps us have a better understanding of what we desire and want in relationship. The more we understand who we are, the more open we are to allow others to show up as their authentic self and give grace.
That's great. That is
That
really
is
true.
true.
The more we understand who we are, the more we open up. That's true. Don't forget about them boundaries.
So I just want to say that all Christians aren't boring. Christian, Christian men or Christian women, they are not all boring. You have boring people, whether they're Christian or non-Christian.
Yeah.
Um, it just depends on the person's personality. And you do have to be your authentic self. And some people personality is just not, bubbly, happy, or outgoing like that, and stuff like that. So you have to take the time to get to know who they are and where they are in their life. Um, if you do run into somebody who is more experienced than you are in different areas in life, they've been out in the streets more than you have, and they come across a Christian person or whatever. Um, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't, I know it says to be equally yoked, but you never know what God has for that person and how he will bring them in or when he will bring them in. And maybe the relationship is not going to just work at that particular time, but it doesn't mean that that person is off,
Right.
Forever.
I think sometimes we look at boring and safe, and I think we forget about what was happening before it was boring and safe, or what seemed to be boring and safe. Like, I can think of some bad times I had in my life when it seemed like it was very exciting. Yeah, and I wouldn't want to go back. I mean, I'll take boring and safe, but boring is never long term. I think sometimes you're resting and it seems boring, but you're in a place of rest, but you're going to start working on something else that's going to take up a lot of time and won't be as boring. I think it's all in how you look at it. Like, what am I doing with my day to day? Well, what am I doing in my day to day with God to make it more fun?
That's true.
Just, what are we working on? What is purposeful to me? I was having a conversation with my son once, and he was telling me that he was like, I spend like so many hours working or whatever, and then tomorrow I just start all over. That's depressing. And I'm like, yeah, but what are you working toward? Like, what is purposeful for you? And that is never boring. You growing and developing isn't boring. If I'm real about what's wrong with me and those things that make life difficult and hard for me, I got a whole lot of stuff to work on. It just may not be what I want to work on.
Right.
And then, I start to gravitate to those things that appear to be more fun, but it just leave me with loss. And so I think it's about you also got to look at a way to appreciate where you are in what seems boring, and to take that back into a relationship perspective, or thinking in terms of my relationship. What can I do in order to make it better? Like, sometimes, I mean, I've been with the same man 29 years of my life. So it's like, I mean, I've been with the same man since I was a child, pretty much. And so there's days, where it's like, this just isn't juicy and fun anymore. But it's like I have to remember. Like, sometimes I'll watch him and just be like, this is a great man. He's beautiful, and my whole perspective changes. And it's like we're starting all over again, and that there's a different type of love that kind of kicks in, and I want to do it again for another 5 years or another 10, and it just never gets old. We just we have that week where it feels like it's getting old, something happens and we rediscover something else about each other that's new,
Right.
and it just gets good to me all the time, over and over and over again. So, same thing with our Christian walk.
So Tamara, explain to us a little bit more about the young dating scene.
There ain't nothing to say now. It's so for me, it's very tough because the more that I've been getting to know people, I guess you can call it dating. Yeah, I guess I am dating, but the more that I'm beginning to know people, the more that I actually know what I want and what I won't settle for. And the more that I see, it is very easy for you to be deceived out here. A lot of people show up. Not true, not speaking truth about themselves, who don't want to open up about their past because they do want to try to manipulate you, and thinking that they're this great person, um I remember Bishop. It was a sermon. He said that not all things that look spiritual are spiritual. So it's a lot of cover-ups out here. It's just a lot of things out here that you just have to really be careful with. So I have a lot of idle time outside of dating. I have a lot of idle time doing things that I love. Exercising, working. I'm always working, but just focusing on things out here, focusing on the things that isn't just about dating. And I think that's important too because a lot of people now dating, they're just dating out here for fun. But my goal is I tend to date for marriage. So a lot of people out there, their values aren't there. We don't have the same values. Self control is not there. Um, a lot of temptation. It's just not all what it's hyped up to be. And I think social media really does a really bad job at portraying what a relationship looks like. It's more for the pictures and all those other things. But of course, relationships it takes work. It's a lot of work and a lot of maturity as well. I believe my generation lacks maturity, and it's very hard to find someone who's there like level headed with you without compromising, you know, the Bible or without compromising the Word of God. So it's just a lot of temptation out here, I'll say, because it's just a lot. You see a lot, there is a lot, so people have a lot. So, but I just try not to dwell too much in the dating pool. Sometimes I do. I am like, it would be nice to have some company, whatever, but I just don't want to. Again, I don't want to idolize dating. I don't want to idolize, company with someone else outside of the presence of God. And I'm sure, once I'm there, God, He will, allow me to, date someone whose intentions are pure. So, but right now at the moment, it's me and Jesus.
You're being
Just me and Jesus.
you're being groomed and prepped.
Yeah, and it's sometimes it's a little. It's not lonely. I wouldn't say that, but it's like, wow, not too many people are doing this, like kind of thing. And it takes a lot of discipline for me to continue to stay on my track where I'm at. I've got swayed a couple of times, but I'm glad he always snatched me back. Like, let's just let's stay over here because it's greater than me. It's more to me than just dating. So I just have to remember that.
I'm glad that you mentioned that you're working on yourself
Hmm.
and doing stuff for yourself and getting to know who you are and feeling comfortable with where you're at. And you're not using religion to cover up,
Oh no,
but you're being your authentic self.
yeah.
So we had a question that just came in. What was one of the first things you learned about yourself after you got married that you wish you would have known in your singleness?
Ooh, wee.
Wow.
Please spit.
That's good. I had to close my eyes.
Look, give me all the details so I can know.
I
I you go ahead, please go ahead.
no, go ahead.
It's too
For
much.
me, because when I got married, I was a single parent when I got married, so I had a child before I got married, and I poured a lot into her, and I probably still do pour a lot into her. Um, and so one of the things that I had to learn is how to be able to divide my time between the two, between investing in my marriage and still investing in my child. Um, that was a big transition for me to be able, because a lot of times I'm gonna be honest, in those first few years, I would get off of work and be like, I'm just going to Walmart. I don't even like Walmart. I can't stand Walmart, but I just needed to go somewhere to decompress from work before I came home because it was a struggle at home with trying to make sure that I was balancing good. And so that was one of the things that I would wish I had known before I got married, that it was going to be that. I guess part of my affections had to shift into the right place, and I had to have a balance between um, being married and then also still being a mother. So I think that was one of the things I wish I would have known while I was still single.
Several things came to mind for me, but the one that sticks out the most was um, realizing that I didn't know myself or him.
Mm.
And I thought I knew him very well, but we didn't know each other, and I didn't know me, and that was a really big hindrance in the beginning, and something that I realized right away. Like you can't you shouldn't join yourself to somebody without knowing who you are and not knowing them well either. Um, and that was something that we neither one of us were taught beforehand. We didn't even do premarital counseling, honestly. We had a couple conversations with the pastor who was going to marry us, but we were trying to abstain. We were trying to abstain from having sex before we got married, and so we were in a rush, and everything just looked cute when you haven't had sex and you're waiting for a while, and you're planning a wedding. And so but yeah, to come on back, that was one of the first things I realized was like, oh my God, you don't even know this man, and you don't know you either, for real. And so yeah, it was rough.
And I don't think you ever really and truly know the other person. I mean, I don't care how much time you spend with. I know you know him better now, but I'm sure there's still some things in there that you still don't know about him because nobody knows anybody completely or totally like that other than God.
Yeah, and I don't mean like knowing him totally, but there were just a lot of things that we just hadn't been honest about,
You're right, right.
and we hadn't developed the character needed in order to be able to be completely honest and lay all our cards out on the table, talk about our insecurities, the things that we're afraid of, our likes and dislikes. We were just so we just had so many. We were very broken,
Right.
and we were joining that brokenness together, and we
Yeah.
just hadn't learned enough about ourselves or each other.
And I think that's a true statement because when I got married, my husband had a previous marriage, and then this was my first time getting married, but I had a child out of marriage. So yeah, it was a lot of broken pieces, yeah, coming together to try to make a whole. And sometimes that can be that can be a very interesting journey
Yeah.
to pull everything together.
Wow. So what y'all saying is to stay single.
I'm, I'm not saying to stay single, but I am saying that get to know who you are,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and try to get to know that person as much as you can, because and there's always going to be something that you're not going to know, and you probably hit your head against the wall and be like, oh my God, I should have saw this, I should have saw this. But if you allow God to be in the middle of your marriage when you choose to marry somebody, or allow him to guide you to the right person, then it'll work out. And it'll be work. And it's gonna be work. It's work whether you marry somebody from the street or if you marry a Christian. It's gonna be relationship gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so no matter who you're with, it's gonna be some form of work. But if you can be on the same foundation, then it
Yes.
might make things a little easier.
Yeah.
Because you'll want to please God as you please each other,
Correct.
and so it makes a big difference.
Mhm. It does. But anyway, that pretty much wraps up our conversation on the book or the devotional in the book, The Blinded by Sight, The Heart Matters. And that was a story of God's choice versus life choices. And so sometimes we just have to remember that you can have fun, excitement in your life now. You don't have to go back to your past when you become,
Yeah.
to have fun. So stay where you're at, stay in your walk with Christ, and have fun there. Come up with different, new, and exciting ways to do things, and make it fun. Add some spark, add some excitement. Do something different that you normally wouldn't do with each other, and talk and communicate is the key. That what I've been hearing this whole time is communication, and just make things look good and make things work. And then you don't have to go back to what used to be to try to find your excitement. So anyway, we want to thank everybody. You guys have anything else you would like to say? I would like to say that go out. If you haven't purchased the book yet, Blinded by Sight, The Heart Matters. This is the book that we're using to discuss our topics out of. You can purchase that through my website, www.claimedbyhim.com. Next month, we'll be on our next topic. We'll try to make it interesting and exciting. And our marriage coach, she's always fun. She always gives us a good laugh. And so we just want to tell everybody thank you for coming out and participating with us, and that we're happy to see everybody. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you for doing this, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm always honored.
Thank you for coming on and sharing. Bye, everybody.